This is the 95th episode of the Effective Executive podcast and YouTube channel. And I wanted to hit upon customer experience. It's such a word that is used by every company, but often a fail with regards to the way that they go about doing things. And I ran into a situation the other day when I was at my bank. I was depositing a check, and it reminded me of the thing that I see all the time in organizations, and that is handoffs. So my experience was I'd gone in to deposit a check. The person that was handling my transaction didn't have the approval level for the size check that I was depositing. So they had to go to their branch manager, who was busy with a customer, and she waited while the branch manager was busy. In the meantime, the line behind me is getting long. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. And it took probably about 10 or 15 minutes before she got the necessary approval and came back. And the first question to her is one that I ask often on these handoffs is, well, so how often do you get declined by the branch manager for an amount, no matter what the amount might be? And she goes, never. So what's the use of the handoff? Oh, yeah, okay. And that's pretty much what I witnessed. And, you know, I've worked with a lot of banks, so I always hear, well, it's the regulations that we have. You have to have, no, the regulations have never said that unless it's something that's come up in the last few months. Regulations don't require people to do that, but I hear that quite often. But regardless, the handoffs, no matter what the setting is, when you are a customer, whether you're on the phone or you're going into a bank or whatever you might be doing, are just maddening because it delays you getting, as a customer, what it is that you are trying to achieve, whatever it might be. And oftentimes these handoffs are like approvals, like at the bank. It might be a different department handles that thing. They have a different system. Maybe a higher skill set is needed. And those are probably the top four anyway. What winds up happening is the customer waits. And then, of course, you know, and if those that listen to my podcast and YouTube channel know how it drives me crazy to get then a survey when I'm still waiting. You know, well, I did my part, so I'm done as far as, you know, the customer service person or the customer facing person might be a better answer, maybe frontline. So typically the reason that these approvals come about is because of trust or because of skill. And, you know, skill can be taught. Now, there are organizations that I worked with where the skill level gets quite high. But, you know, if you understand that these are regular questions that a customer gets, the one-offs, I get it. Not, you know, that's too technical, need the engineer for that type of thing. But those calls typically, no matter what organization I've ever worked with, even engineering firms, that doesn't require, you know, at least initially, customers just trying to get some basic questions. And when the person they're interacting with is, you know, on the front line, can't answer the question, frustration ensues. Oh boy, you know, here's this organization I have to deal with. So it becomes a question of, do you have the right people on the front line, or did you, as I've lamented before, well, we hire the minimum wage or a low pay for those frontline customer facing people, and I've never gotten that. The people interacting the way your customers know your organization, let's pay them the least. So so the pay has to be right too, as well as the skill set that's ultimately needed. Um, so, people do these things um, to be efficient. They want to, we're freeing up the frontline person or the agent on the phone, and so they're 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 freed up to take the next call. In the meantime, the customer that just called doesn't have a resolution. They have no idea, what's going to happen next, and now you're surveying them and those types of things. And oftentimes, as I've mentioned, it's amazing what people will say. Sometimes there are regulatory things, state, federal regulations on things, and that's fine. You just explain that to the customer. But most of the time, people will say, well, there's regulations around that. No, typically it's just rules that somebody on the front line has to follow because either somebody did something a long time ago that was dumb, or maybe because their system is so broken that now it's become a rule that now people just assume it was some type of a regulation. And I'm going to say close to 80% of the time, there's not a regulation around some of these things. There are also the mindset that by virtue of freeing up, that this is going to save time. We're going to free up that agent, and I'm saving them time so they can do more important things like not answer questions to the next customer that they're going to have to call back for. And all these things just add to the costs and frustration around your customer experience. So if you're going to be effective, you need to have the customer that's calling in as much as you can be able to finish whatever task is required, or tasks that are required to end that phone call, or that interaction, so that the customer doesn't have to call back again or wonder, it's not timely. Can you see the costs, becoming involved here? I've got to call back in now because they said they'd do it, but didn't tell me when, and it's been a week. So now I got to call back. And so there's kind of this mutual mystification. If you finish the task end to end, provide the credit to the customer, send out the phone, whatever it is that you're doing, then there's no callback. There's no need because the task is finished end to end from the customer's view. So here are a couple things that you can do immediately to mitigate this. The first one is, first of all, just understand the types of interactions that you're getting from customers. So if you're getting regular questions that cannot be done because they don't have access to that system, that IT system, it's done, and it requires somebody more skilled to do it, or whatever the reason is, understand what those interaction types are. And the ones that you get a lot of, you want your frontline people doing them to completion, end to end. So, it's just a matter of how often things occur. I wouldn't rely, as you know, on your computer systems. You're going to have to go out and listen to the calls or the interactions that are happening. And by virtue of understanding, you can then categorize them and say, can we, somebody's calling in and there's a problem with their bill. Do we really need to hand it off to the billing department? Or what skills does this frontline person need in order to accomplish that? And end the call, be finished with it, and I don't have to worry about it, calling back 6 more times like I did with Comcast. So, and then the second thing is redesign then to allow those customer facing people to complete that task. And this is going to require executive approval to complete. I mean, because if for instance, and one of the biggest bugaboos is finance, typically, which is kind of funny to me. and IT is kind of the gatekeeper, which is, well, they can't give the credit because they don't have access to that system, because if we did, they'd rob us blind. So where's the trust? Where's the, um, building into the system something of trust? Well, they're low-level employees. No, they're customer-facing employees. They're trying to accomplish a task. And I hate that word, too. I mean, they're the lowest-paid people. Why? It doesn't make any sense. So you're going to have to get executives to prove it, because the barrier to getting access to a system, an IT system, to do this thing is going to require executive help, because what they're going to run into is, no, we can't let you have access to that system, and they don't know why a lot of times, but I know why. It's because, well, somebody got into it once. Really? When? Well, 5 years ago. Well, this system's been around for 2 years, but regardless, it is a problem that cannot be solved by the departments themselves. It requires a systemic view of your organization and understanding that you are trying to deliver a service to a customer, and that the people that are interacting with the customer need to, have access to systems to complete it end to end. So, the approvals is the same thing, right? So, getting approval for something that always gets approved makes little sense. So you have to say, okay, so why am I doing this? I understand somebody's new, right? So they're going through, process of learning, and, here's what we're looking for. But most of the time they don't even look for anything. It's just a matter of, well, you weren't high enough on the totem pole to give that approval. I don't know. It's something to look at with regards to organizations. I design this stuff out in them if you need help with it. Sometimes it helps to have somebody from the outside come in and bring the executives together and say, look, this is what's happening. Let's go through a process. Let's go through a way to redesign this work. And, the other problem you run into in this is you'll have an IT company come in, and they're, codifying the workflow through whatever system that it might be. It could be Salesforce, it might be something else. And so these handoffs get built into the system, and people do really ridiculous things when they're forced to do something. A classic story of a telecom the first thing they have to do is know your customer. But they don't even ask what the interaction type is at the beginning. So if somebody's calling in to say, hey, I need a phone number to XYZ branch, you don't need to know your customer. You can just give them, the information, the phone number, the address, or whatever it is they're looking for. So not everything. I think once they get codified, it starts to make you really look stupid unless you've designed something effectively and not efficiently, because there is a difference there. So that's it for this episode. And remember, there is always a better way.